Rightio. So Royal Enfield Continental GT, and I'm on a grand tour. I'm on my way home actually this time, but yesterday took this baby down to Masterton, down the Wairarapa, good 500-kilometre ride in one hit, and yeah, now we're on the return leg home. So bit of an impromptu road trip, but it's a good way to test a bike. That's right, team, another voice over heavy review, sadly. Unfortunately, I still haven't sorted out my microphone for in the helmet, so hopefully the next time I do a ride out on a new bike, I'll have that sorted for you. Today we are riding the Royal Enfield Continental GT 650. This was an impromptu road trip, as I alluded to before. I had a sudden family emergency and had to hot-tail it down to Masterton, which is about a 500-kilometre ride on a good day. Unfortunately for me, as you can see, there were a lot of roadworks, and yeah, it took me a lot longer than the advertised 5.5 hours to get down to Masterton, closer to 7 or 8 hours in the saddle of a Continental GT. So, I know what you're thinking. Was I a madman to do this ride on a cafe racer? It's not a tourer, even though it has GT in the name, GT obviously standing for Grand Tourer. Well, honestly, I think it wasn't too bad. So, the Continental GT is the racier version of Royal Enfield's two 650 twins. The Interceptor 650 is a bike I've kind of been fantasizing about for a couple of years now. So I was really glad to get onto the Conti GT. Differences between the two bikes are minimal. Essentially, you have clip-on handlebars and a humped seat on the Continental GT. The Interceptor has upright bars and a bench seat. This bike, as you can see, has a couple of bits of fruit on it, a nice touring seat, and some S&S pipes, which sound fantastic. And if you know me, I'm not usually a fan of loud pipes. I don't subscribe to the whole loud pipes save lives mantra, so for me to say the pipes sounded nice is big ups from me. So let's take it into the actual review. I've written down my thoughts, and we will go through them. Obviously, I'm not going to go into the real nitty-gritty of the specs. If you want to know the specs, you can easily Google those. This is more riding impressions on a 1,000-kilometre-ish round trip in under 24 hours on the Continental GT. Can it tour is the big question I was trying to answer. And thankfully, Urban Moto Imports, the importers of Royal Enfield to New Zealand, were more than happy to let me use their Continental GT to get the job done. Definitely beats stealing my wife's Mazda Demio, I can tell you that. As I said, the seat's been swapped out for Enfield's official touring seat, which allows greater freedom of movement for the rider, and the exhaust silencers have been replaced with S&S items with a nice throaty growl. It took me a bit longer than advertised, as I said, to get down to Masterton. Google Maps suggests the route from Cambridge to Masterton is 5.5 hours non-stop, but it took me a substantial amount of time longer than that to get the job done. So I barely left Cambridge when I was diverted off New Zealand State Highway 1 and headed off to Hobbiton of all places because of roadworks. So the heavy traffic didn't allow me to stretch the bike's legs, but I got myself into a nice comfortable position and just went along with the flow of traffic, and the power delivery of the 650 was sublime. It was such a nice easy cruise. You've got 35 kilowatts of peak power on tap, pushing around 200 kilos. So it's your classic, understressed, pretty cruisy machine, though you can have a decent amount of fun when you open up the pipes. Don't let the Lamb's classification fool you. The Enfield 650 has more than enough power for the open road, and it's not lacking in real-world performance in any way. Throttle action is smooth and power comes on in a linear fashion. There isn't a heck of a lot going on in the higher RPMs, I'll be honest, but with the S&S pipes I found myself bouncing off the rev limiter more often than not, especially as I snaked my way over the Vinegar Hill. Handling is equally solid. The small diameter forks and twin rear shocks don't scream high performance twisty road slayer, but the Conti GT manages to surprise with a thoroughly enjoyable chassis setup. It's planted and composed with little to complain about. Okay, I'd look for some high performance rubber for the tyres for peace of mind, but honestly, that's about it. Unlike the classic 350, the Continental GT and its Interceptor sibling don't make use of metal for all their bodywork. You got metal tank, obviously, but the guards are actually made of plastic and feature some additional bolt-on bits to give you a bit of extra protection, and you definitely want it, especially if you're going on some gnarly roads. The tyres do kick up a lot of grime onto that beautiful polished engine, and it's not a fun thing to clean if you're not really into cleaning. The clip-on style handlebars aren't horrible either, and the bike's overall rider triangle is quite comfortable. Normally, I'd assume that a bike with low handlebars would put a lot of pressure on the rider's wrists, but I didn't start feeling any real discomfort until around 800 kilometers in the saddle. With a 12-litre tank, the touring range is limited depending on how heavy you are with the throttle. I found myself brimming the tank around every 200k or so with the necessary stop, allowing me to stretch and regain a bit of energy myself. With no windscreen, the Conti GT puts the rider fully in the elements, with my neck in particular feeling the strain of the long ride at the end of the day. After completing a whirlwind tour of much of the North Island, I found myself back home and trying to place the Conti GT. The ticks in the Pro column are obvious. It's a beautifully styled bike and one of the only lamb spec modern classics you can buy in the category. Add to that the fun engine that allows you to enjoy a playful ride as much as a commute, and it seems like a no-brainer. The cons? Honestly, there isn't that much to complain about, especially as our bike was tested. Yes, it is a bit of a heavy, solid feeling thing when you push it around the garage, but once you're out riding, that just melts away. If you're fastidious about cleaning, the polished engine cases will keep you busy, but that's the price you pay for buying a gorgeous bike to begin with. As you can probably tell, I thoroughly enjoyed my time on the Conti GT. I even managed to get up to a little bit of mischief in a campground and gravel road near Taihape, and yeah, it was a fun bike to just muck around on. There was no stress, and it was just so easy to live with. I not only managed to dispel my belief that touring on a Lamb's Cafe racer would be an exercise in pain, but also it charmed the pants off, not literally, thankfully, of everyone that came to have a look at it. If I had the chance, I'd probably do the trip all over again in an instant, though I will be honest and say the weather's a bit shit right now, so I'll probably wait until summer before I attempt to do something like this again. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you found this review entertaining in the slightest. I've been Matt, and I will catch you in the next ride.